Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Fall has moved in. It's cool, windy, typical fall day here in Wisconsin. I can't complain. It's been a beautiful, beautiful fall though. We've had really summer-like weather. I'm sure we're going to get pounded here with the winter pretty quick, but you know, not too long ago, I put out a video on skipping a jig. It was a tutorial how I go about skipping my jigs to get them back into areas where I think the fish are hiding. And I think it's a really important tactic or skill to learn because it gives you a lot more opportunities at catching fish that other anglers are not catching. But I got a lot of feedback from that regarding my bait choice. Like I talked about throwing a dirty jig swim jig, but people want to know what other baits are good for skipping. And I gotta tell you guys, not all baits are made for skipping. It is extremely difficult to try to skip a crankbait or to try to skip a spinner bait. Things that are bigger and bulky or have hooks hanging off, they don't work really well. You also want a bait that's relatively weedless because a lot of times you're skipping back into areas that, you know, have branches or dock posts, all kinds of stuff. So if you're trying to skip a topwater popper or a crankbait, it can be done, but it's difficult, and if you're not really good, you get stuck more times than not. So I've got here a list of the baits that I will automatically go to anytime I'm in a skipping presentation. The first being the dirty jig swim jig that we talked about in that tutorial. The swim jig is just a great weedless bait. I like to put either a chunk on or whatever trailer I'm using, as long as it's a bulkier trailer with not a lot of appendages, it works really well for skipping. You know, this is kind of my #1 skipping bait. I just love the swim jig, which is one of the reasons for it, but it works phenomenally well, very weedless bait, and it catches a lot of fish. So you got to think about a swim jig anytime you're doing it. You know, and the Berkley Maxscent and Chunk is a great trailer on that. John Cox won the Smith Lake event throwing this bait, only in black and blue. So, you know, the next bait, again, is a pretty simple standard bait. It's a jig, right? You know, a jig, most types of jigs are really good, but not all jigs were made for skipping. You know, this jig right here, this is a Matt Herron flipping jig. Matt Herron is one of the best flippers out there, and he designed this jig for dirty jigs with the idea of flipping in mind. One of the things on it, you can see the line tie on it. Because it's raised up at that angle and turned perpendicular to the hook shank, that'll really allows you to pitch it into areas and allows, you know, it's got a bigger, flatter bottom on it, so it just skips really well. It allows you to keep the line tight, rising the bait. This is probably the best skipping jig that I know of, and it's an absolute go-to for me. Again, you can see I've got a small compact trailer. This is a Strike King Menace, I believe. You know, just a good compact little bait, skips really well. And when you're starting with jigs, I always think a little heavier is better. Not super heavy, but like a 1/2 ounce. This is a 5/8 ounce. These are good skipping sizes. Obviously, the lighter weight you throw is going to be easier to skip, but it's harder to actually get to skip with your bait caster. So I think it's better to learn with like a 1/2 ounce jig before going to a much lighter bait, because it's harder to control a lighter bait with a bait caster, in my opinion. So those two baits are absolute standbys. The next, guys, is a stick bait like this Maxscent General. You wacky rig this, put it on, you know, a spinning gear, and you can skip it. This thing will just skip like you're skipping rocks. I mean, it is a phenomenal bait for skipping. One of the reasons I think people love a stick bait is because they can pitch it to wherever they want to go. So, you know, I've got a Maxscent General tied on everywhere I go. And if I need to skip it somewhere, I know I can do it. It's a great skipping bait. Next up, a frog, guys. This is maybe the best bait to learn to skip with because it is so weedless and it's heavy, it casts easy. I mean, you can throw this thing into, you know, the middle of a tree and reel it out as long as you do it nice, steady, and slow. But a frog like this is a Spro Bronzeye 65, just a super great bait to get back to the boat from whatever jungle you threw it into. We all know this is potentially the most weedless bait that's out there. So a frog, guys, is a really, really good bait for skipping. I highly recommend this. And then the last choice is along those same lines again. It has to do with like a toad style bait. This is a Zoom horny toad, a bait that I really like for skipping. You can throw it by itself and throw it back into, you know, anywhere you want to go. The frame on this is built for skipping, you know, a wide body, flat on the top, heavy plastic, bulky, not much arms. This bait will, you know, skip anywhere you want to go. Most toads are along that same profile. The thing that's cool about this is it's such a good skipper. If you put it on a buzz bait like the Dirty Jigs Canterbury Pro Buzz, it makes that a good skipping bait. So you can skip a buzz bait back, you know, pretty much anywhere you want to go at that point. So I really think that you got to look at the toad style baits like the Zoom horny toad as well. All of those very, very good skipping baits. Anytime you're trying to get your bait caught way back into an area that is just a cluster of sticks and branches or dock posts, these baits will get you there and you'll be able to get it out. So not only do they skip well, they are very weedless, which is a really, really good thing anytime you're fishing or trying to skip your bait into areas. So guys, if you're trying to learn how to skip, I recommend checking out some of these baits. They catch fish, they won't get stuck, and you can skip with them. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button. Stay tuned, more tips and tricks coming out tomorrow.